Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Safety Tavern's video on scissor lifts, mobile elevating work platforms. This video is going to be long, so get you a drink, buckle up, and let's get on with the show. We've got ourselves a manufacturer's video on scissor lifts from JLG. It was acquired from API Supply Lifts. Link in the description below. Let's get it on.
JLG Industries Incorporated, manufacturer JLG Aerial Work Platforms, presents JLG ProFit Series Scissor Lift Safety. The purpose of this presentation is to provide the operator with the procedures essential for proper machine operation. This presentation does not relieve the user, operator, from the responsibility of obtaining, reading, and fully understanding the applicable operators and safety manual and other information provided by the manufacturer. The operators and safety manual, a safety handbook, and a copy of the ANSI responsibilities, ANSI A92.6, should be located in the designated compartment located on the front of the machine underneath the platform controls. If these documents are not available, they must be obtained and kept with the machine. The operator of the JLG scissor lift must not accept operating responsibility until instructed by a qualified person. The operators and safety manual has been read and understood, as well as having operated the JLG scissor lift under supervision of a qualified operator. In addition, the operator and employer are responsible for complying with federal, state, local, or provincial rules and regulations covering the proper use and operation of this product. If there is a question on application and/or operation, contact the Product Safety and Reliability Department at JLG Industries Incorporated at 877-JLG-SAFE, 554-7233. Before each use, a walk-around inspection must be conducted to make sure that there is no visible damage, loose or missing parts, or hydraulic fluid leakage. The operator's and safety manual contains a complete inspection procedure that must be followed. This inspection includes the following: the steer cylinder and linkage, the drive motors and cables, the tire and wheel assemblies, check the lug nuts and tire condition, compartment covers and latches, all components are in proper working condition, pothole protection system, the support bar, rollers, limit switches, springs, and the links are properly secured, descent motion alarm. The battery installation. The electrolyte is at the proper level. All cables are secure with no damage or corrosion. Note: always use proper personal protection equipment when working around batteries. The proximity switch, manual descent system, the ladder, the battery charger, rotary switch. The ground controls. The switches are operable and return to the neutral position when released. Placards and control markings are legible, clean, and unobstructed. Guardrail installation. All railings are securely attached. The platform entrance gate chain is in good condition. Platform assembly. If equipped, the platform deck extension operates properly and can be securely locked in place when extended or retracted. Platform controls. The switches and control lever are operable and return to neutral when released. Placards and control markings are legible, clean, and unobstructed. To inspect the next three items, the scissor arms must be raised and the safety prop placed in a proper position to support the scissor arm assembly. Lift cylinder, which includes the hydraulic reservoir, hydraulic pump, motor, and the control valve assembly. There should be no leaks, unsupported, damaged, or broken wires or hoses. Wiring installation. No unsupported, damaged, or broken wires. Scissor arms and sliding wear pads. Check under the machine for loose or missing parts as well as any fluid leaks indicating possible damage to the machine. Also include the following as part of the walk-around inspection: placards, Keep all information and operating placards legible, clean, and unobstructed. Protect when spray painting or shot blasting to maintain legibility. Ensure that copies of all applicable manuals, the Operator's and Safety Manual, the Safety Handbook, and the ANSI Manual Responsibilities are in the manual storage holder. Ensure that all periodic inspections and maintenance has been completed as outlined in the Operator's and Safety Manual for your specific JLG scissor lift. Check the machine for unauthorized modifications. Modification or alteration of a JLG scissor lift shall be made only with prior written permission of the manufacturer. Ensure overall cleanliness. Check all standing surfaces for hydraulic oil spillage and foreign objects. You should start each day with fully charged batteries. Don't smoke or have any open flames when recharging. If there is any evidence of a problem, shut down the lift. Remove it from service and notify the proper authorities. A function check of all systems must be performed after the walk-around inspection is complete. The machine must be positioned on a smooth, firm, level surface in an area free of overhead and ground level obstructions. Read and obey all warning placards and operating instructions on the scissor lift and then the applicable manuals prior to operation. Do not operate the scissor lift until you've done so. Before operating the lift, verify that you are using the proper personal protective equipment. JLG recommends approved head protection to be worn by all operating and ground personnel. While neither ANSI, SIA, or OSHA require the use of approved fall protection devices when using scissor lifts, JLG recommends that all personnel in the platform of the scissor lift use a full body harness with a lanyard attached to an authorized lanyard anchorage point. You are responsible for complying with all applicable laws and regulations as they apply to your work and the personal protection equipment required to perform your work. JLG scissor lifts are equipped with control panels that use symbols to indicate control functions. Refer to your Operator's and Safety Manual or the legend located near the platform and ground control panels for a listing of these symbols and their corresponding functions. Now complete a function check of the JLG scissor lift from the ground controls. The Power Select Switch. This is a 3-position, center-off, key-operated switch supplying operating power to the platform or ground controls as selected. When positioned to platform, the switch provides power to the platform control panel. When positioned to ground, the switch provides power to the ground controls. Emergency stop. This is a 2-position red mushroom-shaped switch that works in combination with the Power Select switch to provide electrical power to the ground control station when placed in the on position. Pushed to the off position, electrical power is shut off to all functions. Lift switch. This is a 3-position switch that raises and lowers the platform. The switch returns to neutral when released. Raise and lower the platform through several cycles. Check for smooth operation. Ensure that the pothole protection system properly lowers in place when the platform is raised. Ensure that the lift cutout operates properly when the platform is raised to the applicable cutout height. Check the emergency stop switch function by depressing it while raising the platform. All machine functions will be disabled if it's functioning properly. If it functions properly, reset the emergency stop switch for operation. Verify the proper operation of the manual descent system. Raise the platform between 2 and 3 feet with the lift switch at the ground controls. Locate the manual descent system and follow the operating instructions as specified in the Operator's and Safety Manual and on the machine. This concludes the functional check of the ground controls. Now perform a functional check of the platform controls. Position the Power Select switch to the platform position. The maximum capacity for the scissor lift is displayed on the machine and in the Operator's and Safety Manual. Know the total weight of all individuals, tools, equipment, and materials to be placed in the platform before operation. Never exceed the rated capacity. Distribute the load evenly on the platform floor. Use extreme caution when entering or leaving the platform. Ensure that the scissor arm assembly is fully lowered. Always face the machine and use the 3-point contact method when entering or leaving the platform. The three-point contact method means that 2 hands and 1 foot or 1 hand and 2 feet are in contact with the machine at all times while entering or leaving the platform. Enter the platform properly and latch the entrance chain or platform gate if equipped. Emergency stop. This is a 2-position red mushroom-shaped switch that works in combination with the power select switch to provide electrical power to the platform control station when placed in the on position. When pushed to the off position, electrical power is shut off to all functions. Set the emergency stop switch to the on position to operate the machine. Check all indicator lights during the bulb check when the power is turned on. Consult the instructions for operating the platform controls as outlined in the Operators and Safety Manual. Verify the proper operation of the lift function by raising and lowering the platform through several cycles and checking for smooth operation. Check the emergency stop switch function by depressing it while raising the platform. All machine functions will be disabled if it's functioning properly. If it functions properly, reset the emergency stop switch for operation. Check the drive function for proper operation by driving forward and reverse. The high drive speed function will not operate when the platform is raised above a certain height, allowing only the low drive speed to function. Consult the Operators and Safety Manual for the maximum platform height at which the high drive function is permitted to operate. Ensure that all drive and/or lift cutouts operate properly when the platform is raised to the applicable cutout height. Consult the specific model and country specifications in the Operators and Safety Manual to determine the cutouts of your specific unit. If any cutouts do not operate properly when the platform is elevated above the specified height, shut down the machine, remove the unit from service, and notify the proper authorities. Evaluate the steer function. Steer left and right and check for proper operation. Check that the drive brake holds when the machine is driven up and stopped on a grade. The grade must not exceed the rated gradability as stated in the Operators and Safety Manual for the applicable JLG Scissor Lift model. When driving with the platform elevated, the JLG pothole protection system must be fully lowered into position. If the pothole protection system bar comes in contact with an obstruction preventing the bar from being fully lowered into position, the drive function will not operate. Verify that the drive cutout functions properly as outlined in the Operators and Safety Manual before operation. Do not drive the machine unless the platform extension is properly secured in place. Do not activate the lift-down function without completely retracting and securing the platform extension in place. This concludes the functional check of the JLG Scissor Lift. If any of the functions outlined in this video or in the Operators and Safety Manual for the applicable JLG Scissor Lift model do not function properly, shut down the machine, remove the unit from service, and notify the proper authorities. Some general safety precautions must be followed during operations of a JLG Scissor Lift. Do not operate any machine on which the safety or instruction placards or decals are missing or illegible. Do not operate the machine until it has been serviced and maintained according to the maintenance and inspection requirements as specified in the Service and Maintenance Manual. Ensure all safety devices are operating properly. Do not remove, modify, or disable any safety devices. Modification of these devices is a safety violation. Never operate a malfunctioning machine. If a malfunction occurs, shut down the machine, remove the unit from service, and notify the proper authorities. Precautions to avoid all hazards in the work area must be taken by the user before operation of the machine. Do not operate the machine in hazardous environments unless approved for that purpose by JLG. Before operation, check the work area for any overhead hazards such as electrical lines, bridge cranes, and other potential overhead obstructions. Ensure that operators of other overhead and floor-level machines are aware of the aerial platform's presence. Disconnect power to the overhead cranes and electrical lines. Barricade floor areas if necessary. The scissor lift is not insulated and does not provide protection from proximity to or contact with an electrically charged conductor. Maintain a safe distance and clearance from electrical lines, apparatus, or any energized parts. Allow for machine movement and electrical line swaying. Maintain a clearance of at least 10 feet or 3 meters between any part of the machine and its occupants, their tools, and their equipment from any electrical line or apparatus carrying up to 50,000 volts. 1 foot additional clearance is required for every additional 30,000 volts or less. Consider all electrical parts and wiring to be energized unless known otherwise. Do not operate the machine when wind conditions exceed the maximum speed outlined in the Operator's and Safety Manual. Do not cover the platform sides or carry large surface area items in the platform when operating outdoors. The addition of such items increases the exposed wind area of the machine. Do not operate or raise the platform from a position on trucks, trailers, rail cars, floating vessels, scaffolds, or other equipment unless the application is approved in writing by JLG. When 2 or more persons are in the platform, the operator shall be responsible for all machine operations. Exercise extreme caution at all times to prevent obstacles from striking or interfering with operating controls and persons in the platform. Watch for obstructions around the machine and overhead when driving. Check clearances above, on the sides, and bottom of the platform when lifting or lowering the platform. During operation, keep all body parts inside the platform railing. Avoid an accumulation of debris on the platform deck. Keep mud, oil, grease, and like substances clean from footwear and the platform deck. Keep both feet firmly positioned on the platform floor at all times. Never position ladders, boxes, steps, planks, or similar items on the unit to provide additional reach for any purpose. Do not increase the platform size with unauthorized deck extensions or attachments. Check floor surfaces for and keep the chassis of the machine a minimum of 2 feet, 0.6 meters from holes, bumps, drop-offs, obstructions, debris, and coverings that may conceal holes and other hazards. Do not drive the machine near pits, loading docks, or other drop-offs. Keep non-operating personnel at least 6 feet, 1.8 meters, away from the machine during operation. Do not elevate the platform or drive with the platform elevated while on or near a sloping, uneven, or soft surface. Ensure the machine is positioned on a smooth, firm, level, and uniformly supported surface before elevating the platform or driving with the platform in the elevated position. Under all travel conditions, the operator must limit travel speed according to conditions of ground surface, congestion, visibility, slope, location of personnel, and other factors causing hazards of collision or injury to personnel. Do not use high-speed drive in restricted or close areas or when driving in reverse. Always post a lookout when driving in areas where vision is obstructed. Be aware of stopping distances in all drive speeds. Travel grades and low drive speed only. Do not exceed the allowable side slope and grade while driving. Before driving on floors, bridges, trucks, and other surfaces, check the allowable capacity of these surfaces. Ensure that the ground conditions are adequate to support the maximum tire load indicated on the tire load decals located on the chassis adjacent to each wheel. Never use the scissor arm assembly to gain access to or leave the platform. Keep hands and limbs out of the scissor arm assembly during operation. Platform to structure transfers at elevated positions are discouraged. Where transfer is necessary, enter or exit through the gate only with the platform within 1 foot, 0.3 meters, of a safe and secure structure. 100% tie-off is also required in this situation utilizing 2 lanyards. 1 lanyard must be attached to the platform with the second lanyard attached to the structure. The lanyard connected to the platform must not be disconnected until such time the transfer to the structure is complete. Do not operate without guardrails in place and secured. It's a safety violation. Do not carry materials directly on the platform railing unless approved by JLG. Always ensure that power tools are properly stowed and never left hanging by their cord from the platform work area. Never attempt to use the machine as a crane. Do not tie off the machine to any adjacent structure. Never attach a wire, cable, or any similar item to the platform. Do not allow personnel to tamper with or operate the machine from the ground with personnel in the platform, except in an emergency. This section provides information on the procedures to be followed and the systems and controls to be used in the event an emergency situation is encountered during machine operation. Prior to operation of the machine and periodically thereafter, the entire Operators and Safety Manual should be reviewed by all personnel whose responsibilities include any work or contact with the machine. Although towing the machine is not recommended, provisions for moving the machine in case of a malfunction or power failure have been incorporated. Consult the Operators and Safety Manual for the proper procedures to be used only for emergency movement to a suitable maintenance area. The ground control station is used for functional checks in emergencies only. It's located on the frame on JLG scissor lifts. The controls on this panel provide the means for overriding the platform controls and for controlling lift functions from the ground. Place the key select switch to the ground position and operate the desired function switch. The manual descent system is used in the event of total power failure to lower the platform. Consult the Operators and Safety Manual for the location and proper operation of the manual descent system for the applicable JLG scissor lift. Know how to use ground controls in an emergency situation. Ground personnel must be thoroughly familiar with the machine operating characteristics and the ground control functions. Training must include operation of the machine, review, and understanding of the Operators and Safety Manual, and hands-on operation of the controls. To shut down and park the machine, the procedure is as follows. Drive the machine to a well-protected and ventilated area. Ensure the platform is fully lowered. Shut down the emergency stop at the platform controls. If necessary, cover the platform controls to protect instruction placards, warning decals, and operating controls from hostile environmental conditions. Remember to uncover prior to operation. Shut down the emergency stop at the ground controls. Position the platform ground select switch to off and remove the key to prevent unauthorized operation. Chalk at least 2 wheels when parking the machine for an extended period of time. Charge the batteries as outlined in the Operators and Safety Manual. It's important to complete your work safely using the JLG scissor lift. In order to do so, you must utilize common sense and the information provided in this presentation, in the Operator's Manual, and the decals and placards on the JLG scissor lift. We were not able to cover all optional features and configurations in this presentation. Therefore, if your JLG scissor lift is equipped differently than those shown in this presentation or in your operating manual, contact your authorized JLG distributor in your area or contact JLG Industries Incorporated for proper operating instructions.
All right, that's the end of the JLG video. Now, I did chop that video up, but I only took out dead space where they just had this long pause. Otherwise, I kept the video completely intact. So first of all, we're going to look at the Operations and Safety Manual. And as you can tell right here, this covers multiple models. 1930 ES, it covers 2032 ES, so on and so forth. It covers all these models. You need the Operations and Safety Manual for your specific model that you're dealing with. For scissor lifts, this is normally kept inside of this little black box, but it could be inside of a plastic bag hanging there, or it could even be in some kind of a binder off to the side. The user manual doesn't have to be directly on the lift, although most rental companies will have it on the lift installed. You could have it in a binder somewhere else so long as you're familiar with it, and that is the big key. You need to be familiar with the user manual for the specific lift that you're using. If you don't have a user manual, you could contact either the manufacturer or the rental company, depending on your situation, and get it. There's many of places to download them, but the question is that the most current one? And yes, these things do get updated. So you may have a 20-year-old scissor lift that's had 3 or 4 different updates to its user manual. So you need to make sure you're using the most current user manual by the manufacturer. Now, most scissor lift manufacturers are pretty good about putting their part numbers on the side of the machine, but just in case that's scratched up, rubbed off, whatever, you can also find it on an ID plate somewhere on the machine. Look around, find the ID plate, download the appropriate manual, talk to your manufacturer, get the appropriate manual, or even talk to the rental company and get the appropriate manual that you need for your employees to be able to do this safely. Now, assuming that we have the right manual, we're going to do a walkthrough the JLG manual that you're looking at right now. Understand, I'm not going to go through every single page. I'm just doing a pretty good highlights of the most common violations that I've seen. You do need to be familiar with the whole manual, not just doing this little recap. So go through your own manuals at your own pace. That being said, let's go through it. The Operator and Safety Manual must be read and understood in its entirety before operating the machine. Pretty simple. You have to read this book before you operate according to JLG. An operator must not accept operating responsibilities until adequate training has been given by competent and authorized persons. Allow only those authorized and qualified personnel to operate the machine who have demonstrated that they understand the safe and proper operation and maintenance of the unit. This is very simple. You need to be trained by a competent person that's authorized to train on scissor lifts for your company on this specific machine. Very, very simple. Do not operate this machine until the inspection and function checks have been done. Avoid accumulation of debris on platform deck. Keep mud, oil, grease, and other slippery substances from footwear and platform deck. Machine operation requires your full attention. Bring the machine to a full stop before using any device, like a cell phone, two-way radios, etc., that will distract your attention from safely operating the machine. Meaning, when you're moving this machine, you're doing nothing else. You're just moving the machine and you're paying attention. Do not use machine for any purpose other than positioning personnel, their tools, and equipment. Now, this is just a real fancy way of saying don't use it like a crane and don't use it like a forklift. A forklift picks stuff up, like you putting a bunch of material on the handrails and then going up. And then a crane lifts up stuff that hangs below it. Like you hanging a bunch of crap off the bottom of the scissor lift. Don't do that. Remove all rings, watches, and jewelry when operating machine. Do not wear loose-fitting clothing or long hair unrestrained, which may become caught or entangled in equipment. Take your crap off. Very simple. JLG recommends that all persons in the platform wear a full body harness with a lanyard attached to an authorized lanyard anchorage point while operating this machine. For further information regarding fall protection requirements on JLG products, contact JLG. Pretty simple. They want you to be tied off inside of the machine. Enter and exit only through gate area. Use extreme caution when entering and leaving platform. Ensure that the platform assembly is fully lowered. Face the machine when entering or leaving the platform. Always maintain 3 points contact with the machine using 2 hands and 1 foot or 2 feet and 1 hand at all times during entry and exit. This is basic ladder safety, climbing up and down. The big one is face the machine. Face the machine when you're getting on it and face the machine when you're getting off of it. Maintain a clearance of at least 10 feet between any part of the machine and its occupants, their tools, and their equipment from any electrical line or apparatus carrying up to 50,000 volts. 1 foot additional clearance is required for every additional 30,000 volts or less. And here's your volt chart. 0 to 50, 10 feet, 50 to 200, 15, 200 to 350, 20 feet, 350 to 500, 25 feet, 500 to 750, 35 feet, and 750 to 1,000, 45 feet. This requirement shall apply except where employer, local, or government regulations are more strict. Stringent means strict. Do not elevate platform or drive with platform elevated while on or near a sloping, uneven, or soft surface. Ensure machine is positioned on a firm, level, and smooth surface before elevating platform or driving with the platform in the elevated position. Do not cover the platform sides or carry large surface area items in the platform when operating outdoors. The addition of such items increases the exposed wind area of the machine. Very simple. Do not tarp your scissor lifts. Do not put something up to protect you from the wind or protect you from to protect your machine from like spray paint or whatever. Do not do that. You create a big giant sail that wants to knock this thing over. Approved headgear must be worn by all operating and ground personnel. Most of us in construction have to wear hard hats anyways. Wear your dadgum hard hat. If driving machine with the platform control station from ground, do not hang the control box on any part of the machine while driving. Hold the control box and keep it at least 3 feet distance from the machine. When you go through a doorway, what they don't want you to do is to be right next to the machine to where you can run yourself over. Next, we have operator training, but first, you need to understand OSHA rules and ANSI rules and government rules and your company safety rules and GC rules. All of that is first, and then we look at this list. So it's not just take this list and go. It's take this list plus everything else, and then we go. So let's get into this list. Use and limitations of the controls in the platform and at the ground, emergency controls, and safety systems. So how to control it from all points. Control, label, instruction, and warnings on the machine. Do you understand what all the stickers mean? Rules of the employer and government regulations. Again, all those rules from before that I just said. Do you understand what all has to apply? Use of approved fall protection device. This is the fall protection devices that you have and where you're going to hook up. It's plan it out. Plan out what you're going to do. Enough knowledge of the mechanical operation of the machine to recognize a malfunction or potential malfunction. This is learning how to do the function check. That should enable you to recognize all of the issues in it, because you have to recognize that all the functions are operating correctly. So can you do a function check? And then also, when should you do a function check? The safest means to operate the machine where overhead obstructions, other moving equipment, and obstacles, depressions, holes, drop-offs. So pretty much get them in the scissor lift and explain to them, hey, when there's something over here, do this. When there's something above your head, do that. When there's things on the ground, do this. It is literally a how do you handle all the crap that's going to be in your way from above your head to down on the ground. Means to avoid the hazards of unprotected electrical conductors. This one, I've seen time and again contractors having issues with this. When there's an electrical line, you stay away from it. Stay away from it. Stay away from it. If you need to get somewhere where an electrical line is hanging down or in your way, call the electricians or your facilities maintenance or whoever handles electrical stuff on your project. Call the electricians and get them to move it out of the way, get them to make it safe, get them to deal with it. But if you're a painter or whatever, do not touch the electrical lines. Do not treat every electrical line like it is going to bite you, like it's a snake, and it's going to attack your face and prevent you from having children for the rest of your life. That snake is going to kill you. Leave it alone. Call the electricians. Let them come in and move it into a safer area. Specific job requirements or machine application. This is a weird one, but it's more like if we're working in a data center, do we need to have a diaper on the bottom? These are unique things that will come up, and additional training will be required based off of if you're modifying the work environment, which could raise a hazard. That's why it's so generic here. It's because this is the catch-all section for the training. Training must be done under the supervision of a qualified person in an open area free of obstructions until the trainee has developed the ability to safely control and operate the machine. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you can't just watch a class and then be good to go on a scissor lift, because you need to operate it. And anyone who's ever operated a scissor lift, you know riding the rodeo, because that's what every new operator is going to do. They're going to get in that lift and they're going to jerk around a whole lot, and they don't know how to figure out how to control it. And that's your dead giveaway. This operator has no training because they're riding the rodeo. They're jerking around. Anyone who's operated a scissor lift, you'll have a few jerks when you first get the feel of it, kind of like working a clutch. When you first get the feel of it, it'll take you a minute to figure out how, where it stops and where the exact temperamentalness of it. But you aren't going to be riding the rodeo. And this is part of the training on this machine. You need to train them on that machine out in the field in person. The operator must be instructed that they have the responsibility and authority to shut down the machine in case of a malfunction or other unsafe condition of either the machine or the job site. This one I think every operator I know knows. They know that they have the authority to shut the job down. Like, that's pretty simple. This is your pre-start inspection. I'm not going to go through every word on this, but I'll cover the overall. Check the cleanliness, check the structure, decals and play cards, operations and safety manual, walk-around inspection, battery, fluid levels, accessory attachments, and function check. Now, for my companies, I tell my people, when you're checking the batteries, do not open those batteries up. You pull open the compartment, you look, see if there's anything that looks crazy. If there's something that looks crazy, call the rental company or call a repair person. You are not a JLG authorized repair technician, thus you will not be working on JLG scissor lifts. We're going to call someone who knows what they're doing, and they can come deal with it. I don't care if you think you know what's going on. Your job is not to work on the scissor lift. Your job is to use the scissor lift, not work on it. So open up the compartment, take a look. If there's something wrong, call the right person. Now, that was the pre-start inspection. This is the walk-around inspection. Again, make sure the machine is powered off. And now we're going to check platform control console, the steer cylinder, spindle tie rod drive motor and steering linkage, wheels and tires, pothole protection system, that's the little things that flip down, battery compartment, manual descent, beacon, rotary angle switch, ground controls, hydraulic pump motor control valve installation, lift cylinder, spindle tie rod drive motor and steer linkage, scissor arms, pivot pins, and sliding wear pads, and then platform handrail installation. Now, I don't mean to be biased, but I normally push us through the previous inspections pretty quick And then the function check is where I really, when I'm doing a field training session, the function check is where we spend the majority of time, and that is teaching the guys and girls in the field how to actually check the machine to make sure it's working correctly. And we run them through every bit of this. From the ground control, do all this stuff. Then we get them in the platform. Can they do all of this stuff? To put it in a really small nutshell, I have them get up into the scissor lift, and they have to be able to show me what every single button does. Testing every function. Can they rotate the wheels up, down, left, right, back? There's not that many controls, but I make sure that they can operate every one during the function check. Function check is also the time when you find that sweet spot of how to operate it. The manual descent valve is used in the event of total power failure to lower the platform using gravity. And yes, while you're up there, some idiot can come by and just start lowering your platform down. That is called horseplay, and it is usually in every single company policy, as well as every general contractor. Horseplay is forbidden on every job site. It's kind of funny to jack with somebody, but it's also extremely dangerous to just start lowering somebody's platform down while they're working. You don't know what's going on. You could literally cause an injury. Do not manually lower someone's platform down, regardless of how funny it is. Do not manually lower their platform down unless there's an actual emergency and that operator knows you're doing it. All right, folks, we're about the 30-minute mark into this video, and I am going to strongly recommend you go take a break. Stand up, stretch, smoke them if you got them. I strongly recommend take a break. There's going to be a counter up here. I'm going to press play on the counter in a second. When it gets down to 1, we're going to get back into this video, and you'll see. All right, hard-working men and women of construction, let's get back at it. So I apologize, but I'm going to have to confuse you all a little bit. And then I'm going to blow your minds. And then you're probably going to feel frustrated, but I promise you at the end of this weird segment, I'm going to make everything make sense. You see, if I took any normal person in construction and I said, what is this piece of equipment right here? Well, every person with any kind of a brain is going to say, well, that's a scissor lift. And I completely agree with you. When we're on a construction job site, this is a scissor lift. When you pick up the phone and you call the rental company and you say, I need a scissor lift, they know exactly what you're talking about. This is what we call it, as a scissor lift. The problem is, if you take this OSHA 1926 Code of Federal Regulations, it is not going to say the word scissor lift in it. What it's going to say is things like aerial lift and mobile scaffolding. But then it's also going to reference an ANSI regulation, and then you go look at that, and they're calling it a mobile elevated work platform. Okay, you know what? Let's go to the manufacturer. Maybe the manufacturer can tell us exactly what this piece of equipment's name is. What is the nomenclature? What is the title of this piece of equipment? And so we look at the title page of that user manual that we just looked at. Where's the name of it? Okay, so now let's take a look inside of it. The machine, the machine, the machine, the machine, the machine. In fact, you have to go all the way down to page 33 before you see the word scissor lift. This machine is a self-propelled aerial work platform on top of an elevating scissor arm mechanism. What? Don't worry, they say it in the next sentence. The scissor lift's intended purpose, boom, there you go. It's a scissor lift according to the manufacturer. The previous sentence was a description of the scissor lift. So JLG is calling it a scissor lift, and as further proof, all you got to do is go look at their website, and boom, JLG scissor lift. Now I'm going to take the term scissor lift exactly as the manufacturer has used it, and now I'm going to go look at OSHA and figure out what do they want here. Now OSHA knows sometimes they're not the best at explaining things, and so they issue out things called LOIs, or letters of interpretation. Sometimes people like me will use the word like letter of instruction. What they're actually meaning is letter of interpretation from OSHA, or LOIs. Now, if we take this cluster of names and we look at all the LOIs that apply to this is a big list going all the way back to 1973. That's right. This argument has been going on since 1973, what the rules are on what lifts. We take this and now we want to look at a couple of very key ones. This is a big list. Don't worry, I already went through it. Here's the ones we really want to look at. All right, so we've got the July 21st, 1998 Dennis Vance LOI. And if just trust me on this one, this whole section here, they're just jibber-jabbering about boom lifts. Getting away from boom lifts, this is where they say all other types of mobile lifts would be covered by the specific requirements of 1926 452W and 451. And this is where, when I said earlier, there's a place OSHA throws out ANSI, this is where they're throwing it out. Please note, however, that if an employer is in full compliance with the requirements of the relevant document of the ANSI A92 series, OSHA would consider that compliance as providing an appropriate degree of safety for employees. So you don't have to comply with OSHA and ANSI in regards to this. If you're complying with ANSI standards in regards to scissor lifts, the way ANSI defines it, then you're good to go. Otherwise, you need to be complying with OSHA 452W and 451. The second one is August 1st, 2000, W. Sean Rainey. And this one, they are specifically using the wording scissor lifts. So both of these in conjunction is your definitive evidence of what OSHA wants you to do. And if we jump all the way down here, therefore scissor lifts are not addressed by the aerial lift provisions of subpart L. So when you hear aerial lift, you're not talking about scissor lifts, so we can throw that one out. While there are no OSHA provisions that specifically address scissor lifts, they do meet the definition of a scaffolding, again, 451, but we already knew that. Employers must therefore comply with other applicable provisions of subpart L when using scissor lifts. For example, since scissor lifts are mobile, the specific requirement for mobile scaffolds in the scaffolding standard, 1926 452W, mobile scaffolds must be met. Meaning, just like the previous one, but now they're actually educating us a little bit better, saying 451 and 452W must be complied with on scissor lifts. Now me, I like the rule of three. That's just how I do it. I like to beat dead horses. So OSHA came out in 2016 with a scissor lift specific hazard alert. And if you go look down, you'll see that they put the regulations. This is on page 3 of it. You'll see that they put the regulations that apply to scissor lifts. 1926.21, safety and training. 1926 451, general requirements. 1926 452, additional requirements. And 1926 454, training requirements. This is our hit list of what we need to look at. Now, OSHA is still peddling ANSI. So if you look down just a little bit lower, you'll see the American National Standards Institute has standards for manufacturing, owning, and operating scissor lifts. They can be found, blah, blah, blah. It didn't say we have to comply with ANSI. It's just saying, hey, by the way, here's some standards for you if you want to use them. Now, some people would question, why didn't we just go to the hazard alert immediately? It's 2006. It's way more recent than both of the LOIs, so why wouldn't we lean on that? Because OSHA put a disclaimer at the bottom of the document, and we cannot lean on hazard alerts. This hazard alert is not a standard or regulation. This is not going to hold up in court, but the regulations will, and the LOIs give guidance on how to apply the regulations. That's why this is good supporting evidence, but it is not the actual regulation, nor is it OSHA's black and white on their website letter of interpretation of how to apply their standard. All right, so now that we've banged our dadgum head against the wall 150 times, now understand this is a scissor lift or a mobile scaffolding. It is not an aerial lift according to OSHA. That's a boom lift. That means this regulation doesn't apply. It is not a mobile elevated work platform. That is complying with ANSI standards, which we'll cover in the next chapter. But according to OSHA, it is a mobile scaffolding. And then according to the manufacturer, it's a scissor lift. So the only rules we're going to look at right now is 1926-21, 451, 452W, and 454, and that is it. And now we finally get into my favorite thing, which are the regulations. Yeah, the majority of this doesn't really specifically matter about scissor lifts except for right here, and that is 1926-21 Bravo 2. The employer shall instruct each employee in the recognition and avoidance of unsafe conditions and the regulations applicable to his work environment to control or eliminate any hazards or other exposure to illness or injury. That's it. 1926.21 is done. For real, that's it. It's just one page. So done. Now I give you a warning, we're about to hit 451, and yes, I know a lot of this doesn't apply to you, and I'm going to haul butt through it, so let's go. Right here it says this section does not apply to aerial lifts, but we know they're talking about boom lifts, not scissor lifts, because of the OSHA LOI. So let's keep going. Here we have capacity, but this is more about how to build it. So page 1, done. Page 2, scaffolding platform construction. We're not building a scissor lift, so page 2, done. Page 3, we're not building scaffolding, so page 3, done. We're not building scaffolding, so page 4 is done. Yep, still not building scaffolding, page 5, done. We're not building suspension scaffolding, so page 6 is done. We're still not building a suspension scaffolding. Page 7 is done. Page 8, yep, no suspension scaffolding being built here. Nope, still not building a suspension scaffolding. Done. I vote no on suspension scaffolding. Done. This top part, again, suspension scaffolding, done. But down here, we're starting to get into access. 1926-451 access. This really matters for scissor lifts if you plan on using a scissor lift to get to somewhere else, which is acceptable, but there are some rules. If you look right here, when scaffolding platforms are more than 2 feet above or below a point of access, you got to use something else. You got to use ladders, stairs, whatever, blah, 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 to bridge the gap. Now, we're in a scissor lift, so it's not that big of a deal. Just raise or lower the scissor lift to get yourself within that 2-foot barrier. Up here, they're talking about hook-on ladders. Up here, they're talking about hook-on ladders. Here, they're talking about stair-type ladders. And here, they're talking about stair towers. This page is done. This is more stair stuff, done. Up here, it's more stairs. But here, we start ramps and walkways, but the scissor lift's already built. Doesn't apply. Up here, more ramps and walkways. Down here, though, it says something very specific, and that is direct access to or from another surface shall be used only when scaffolding is not more than 14 inches horizontally and not more than 24 inches vertically from the other surface. So where you're stepping onto and off of the scissor lift, and then of course vice versa, it cannot be more than 14 inches away and not more than 2 feet up and down worth of a gap that you're stepping onto this other surface. And back to headbanging, down here is erecting and dismantling scaffolding. Erecting and dismantling scaffolding doesn't apply. Use. Scaffolding and scaffolding components shall not be loaded in excess of their maximum intended loads or rated capacities. This applies to you. Doesn't matter. Scaffolding and scaffolding components shall be inspected for visible defects by a competent person before each work shift and after any other occurrence which could affect a scaffold's structural integrity. And I'm not going to read the rest because if something's damaged on the scissor lift, call the scissor lift repair people or the rental company. This doesn't apply because scissor lifts are designed to be moved with people in them. Here's the voltage chart, but we already covered it in the scissor lift operator's manual. We're not building a scaffolding, so this doesn't matter. Employees shall be prohibited from working on scaffolds covered with snow, ice, or other slippery materials, except as necessary for removing such materials, already covered in the equipment manual. Where swinging loads are being hoisted onto or near scaffolds such that the loads might contact the scaffold, taglines or equivalent measures to control the load shall be used. This could be another trade, or it could be your actual crew that's handling materials that could bump the lift. This doesn't matter. We're not using an adjustable suspension scaffold. Suspension ropes don't apply. Bingo. Work on or from scaffolds is prohibited during storms or high winds unless a competent person has determined that it's safe for employees to be on the scaffold, and those employees are protected by a personal fall arrest system or wind screens. But we do not put up wind screens on a scissor lift because you're going to make a sail and knock that thing over. Debris shall not be allowed to accumulate on platforms. Pretty simple. Makeshift devices such as, but not limited to, boxes, barrels, shall not be used on top of scaffold platforms to increase the working level height of employees. You cannot put anything on that scissor lift and get height. Ladders shall not be used on scaffolds to increase working level height of employees. Period. There are some rules that your competent person for your company can work with, but in this class, the answer is no. No ladders on scissor lifts, period, because the manufacturer did not design it to be used that way. This one's talking about suspended scaffolding, suspension wire, hoisting, welding, and then we get into fall protection. If you're 10 feet up, you have to have either fall protection or fall prevention, specifically on scaffolds. This is not a bosun's chair. This is not an adjustable suspension scaffolding. This is not a chicken ladder. This is not a self-contained adjustable scaffold. We're not on a walkway located within the scaffolding. Scissor lifts are not designed specifically for bricklayers. And because none of this applied to us, we have to comply with this. Nobody's building or dismantling scaffolding. This doesn't apply. Down here it says, in addition to meeting the requirements of 1926-502 Delta, and then it starts blah, blah, blahing. So 1926-502 Delta is the fall protection standard area, and that is where specifically it gets into personal fall arrest systems. That should have been covered in a fall protection class, other than this. This is talking about anchor points, but you're going to hook up to the actual scissor lift anchor points that the user manual told you to. And you're not going to do weird stuff like hook a lanyard to another lanyard or anything weird. Your fall protection class should have covered this. This is talking about guardrails, and this is talking about the guardrail systems, but you're not modifying it, you're not building it. This is just all the rules for the guardrails, but it doesn't really apply to you because you're not building a scissor lift. More guardrail building stuff. This doesn't really apply to you other than maybe right here. Guardrails shall be surfaced to prevent injury to an employee from punctures or lacerations and to prevent snagging of clothing. But again, call the rental company, get them out there to fix whatever's sharp or tearing into people. And this moves us into falling object protection. Now this is a really good part for scaffolding, falling object protection, but when we come to scissor lifts, there's only two real applicable areas here. One, you got to wear a hard hat. And then two, where there's a danger of tools, materials, or equipment falling from a scaffolding and striking employees below, the following provisions apply. The area below the scaffolding to which objects can fall shall be barricaded, and employees shall not be permitted to enter the hazard area or install toe boards. But that's not an answer, because most of the time on scissor lifts, we're reaching outside of the basket. We're not just working directly above the scaffolding. We're reaching outside of the basket. So what is a toe board going to prevent when you're handling materials outside of the basket? We're not going to install panels or screens on this, again, because we're reaching out of the basket. We're not going to change the opening sizes of the handrails. We're not going to put up a canopy structure, debris net, or catching platform strong enough to withstand it. Again, we're not putting up a canopy, and we're not putting up a canopy because these are scissor lifts. They're meant to be quick. So the option is keep everyone away from your scissor lift. There have been many jobs we've been on where GCs have wanted us to put up cones and then put danger tape around the scissor lift. This is partially in compliance with right here, this regulation, but it's also partially in compliance with just good practices of not wanting two lifts to ram into each other. We're not using canopies. We're not using support lines and suspension ropes. Where toe boards are used, they shall be capable of withstanding 50 pounds of force without failure. They're not intended for you to step up on the toe boards of the scissor lift. Keep your boots off the toe boards. And that is 1926-451 is done. 452 is a lot shorter. This is scaffolding additional requirements for specific scaffolding. We're going to haul through this. Now, I wouldn't normally show somebody all of this, but in case there's ever an argument, I want to make sure that you understand why only Section W applies. And that is, A is pole scaffolding, B is tube and cupular scaffolding, C is fabricated frame, D is plasters, decorators, and large area scaffolds, E is bricklayer square scaffolds, F is horse scaffolds, G is form scaffolds and carpenter bracket scaffolds. None of these apply to you. Roof bracket scaffolds, outrigger scaffolds, pump jack scaffolds, ladder jack scaffolds, window jack scaffolds, crawling boards, step platform, tread ladder scaffolds, single point adjustable suspensions, 2-point adjustable, multi-point adjustable, and catenary. None of this applies to you. Float scaffolds, interior hung scaffolds, needle beam scaffolds, multi-level suspended scaffolds, W we're going to come back to, repair bracket scaffolds, and stilts scaffolds. None of this applies to you. All right, back to W. All of this is more for building the scaffolding. This is about locking the wheels on a scaffolding, but you're just not going to press the button, so the wheels are locked. This is physically pushing a scaffolding, which you're not going to physically push a scissor lift, and the scaffold runs on its own power, so you shouldn't be using anything else to push it. This is talking about the scaffold being stabilized to prevent tipping during movement, which it should be lowered down to its lowest position if you are going to move it. Well, the scissor lift is designed for employees to ride on it, so this is kind of a null and void section. All of this is kind of a null and void section. And if this is the only place you hear it, no one's allowed to ride on the outside of a scissor lift. So here you go. Suck your platform in before you move your scissor lift. And then this is all about leveling it, which it's a scissor lift. You shouldn't have to level it. And with that, 1926 452W is done. Bring on the last set of OSHA regulations. All right, this last section is the training requirements for scaffolding. This part right here talks about who can train them, but JLG has already covered it in better detail. The nature of any electrical hazard, fall hazards, and falling object hazards in the work area, the correct procedures for dealing with any of those hazards, proper use of the scissor lift, what is the maximum intended load and the load carrying capacities of the scissor lift, and any other pertinent requirements of this subpart. Back into training, but again, JLG did it better. The nature of the scissor lift, correct procedures for moving, operating, inspecting, and maintaining the scissor lift, the maximum intended load, and any other pertinent requirements of this subpart. When the employer has reason to believe that an employee lacks the skill or understanding needed for safe work involving the use of a scissor lift, the employer shall retrain each such employee so that the requisite proficiency is gained. Retraining is required in at least the following situations. Worksite presents a hazard about which an employee has not been previously trained, when the scissor lift or the fall protection changes, or where inadequacies in an affected employee's work involving scaffolds indicate that an employee has not retained the required proficiency. It does not say here that when an employee does something dumb. What it says here is employer has reason to believe that an employee lacks the skill or understanding. If you ask the employee, did you know that you broke the rule? And they say yes. And then you ask them, did you know that could risk your life? And they say yes. They had the skill and they had the understanding. So that should be, in my opinion, that should move into disciplinary action and not into retraining. They knew what they did was wrong and they knew the repercussions. They just decided not to do it. That doesn't mean retraining. That means disciplinary action. But that's just the Safety Tavern's view on it. Talk to the competent person for your company to figure out what's going on. And let's move on to ANSI. Now, the first logical thing that any person's going to say is, wait a minute, why are we covering ANSI when we just did the OSHA regulations? But before that, you did the crazy portion of it where we don't have to comply with ANSI. Yes, I understand, but some of your scissor lift user manuals will say operators must comply with ANSI standards. And if they do say that, I wanted you to have a little bit of understanding of some of the differences. Also, maybe your general contractor in their safety manual that you're working under, maybe they say you have to comply with ANSI standards. Or maybe even your own safety manual says scissor lift operators have to comply with ANSI standards. If this is the case, I need you to understand that I cannot do a full detailed layout the way that I did with OSHA, because OSHA's regulations are out there for free for everybody. ANSI standards are locked behind paywalls. So this is a specific purchase, this is another specific purchase, and this is another specific purchase. But the problem is they may have updated all these. So then you have to buy it again, and buy this again, and buy this again, and whatever else applies. So I have to be very careful about how I deliver ANSI standards in mass in this forum, because it could be seen as me stealing money from a company. So understand, there are additional ANSI standards if you have to comply with it. I just wanted you to kind of know a little bit of the difference. That way you knew and you could move forward. So let's get through this. According to ANSI, this is a Type 3 Group A MOOP. And for those who do not speak Klingon, ANSI has laid out a list exactly what a MOOP is and the definitions, Group A and B, and then Type 1, 2, and 3. Of course, they have the disclaimer of only people that are trained properly, blah, 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 can operate MOOPs. And if you're the supervisor of a MOOP operator, you have to be trained also. Here's a big one. The user shall designate a qualified person to monitor, supervise, and evaluate operators on a regular basis to ensure their proficiency. So there needs to be someone designated to monitor, like to actually go out and watch. But then again, shouldn't the supervisor already be doing that? So it's a little strange that the way that they word stuff in ANSI, but it's just supervise your people. Here's another big difference. If the operator hasn't operated a MOOP in a long time, they need to be retrained. So as y'all can see, OSHA was focusing on do they have the skill and do they have the knowledge? Whereas over here, we're getting things like, okay, how long's it been since he did the skill? And then the other one is, did he have an accident? Or she, whatever, I'm not being sexist here. Did they have an accident? Because if they had an accident, nope, they need retraining. Doesn't matter if they knew what they were doing or if they did it wrong or they made the wrong judgment. They clearly need new training. And as far as ANSI's concerned, there's no such thing as just doing field training. You must have classroom/online, and you must have hands-on. 2 separate training blocks. You cannot just train in the field. And now this part I agree with. You cannot just train in a classroom. You have to have both. Now I can't really fault this. This is the contents of theory. This is the classroom training stuff. And all of this is stuff that absolutely applies and should be trained on. There's nothing wrong with anything on this list. JLG video did it very well. We did a little extra with the OSHA stuff, but I'm not going to cover this whole list, nor it continues on to the next page. I'm not going to cover this whole list because it's already been done. Hands-on training, it's my opinion, it's not quite as good as the JLG list, but it's still a decent list. Now, here's a big difference. ANSI focuses very hard on supervisor training. The rules, regulations, and standards that apply to MOOPs, including the provisions where OSHA didn't talk at all about the supervisors having to. ANSI is nailing supervisors who supervise MOOP operators. You have to know the regulations. They already said you have to be trained, but also down here, knowledge that the manufacturer's operators manuals are an integral part of the MOOP and need to be stored properly in the weather-resistant compartment on the MOOP. So there is no having the manual somewhere else. It has to be on the MOOP. Swinging back over, the classroom training environment should incorporate proper lighting and acoustics, room size, and capacity to accommodate the number of trainees, heating and air conditioning, presentation equipment, visibility for all trainees of the presentation, and restroom facilities. And that is way more above and beyond than OSHA went as far as mandations. To demonstrate competency, each trainee shall show proficiency in both theory, the classroom time, and practical, the hands-on time. Results of the theory and practical evaluations shall be documented. So you got to test them both in the field and in the classroom and document it. Once they're done with the training, you got to give them a training card, and it shall consist of the name of the company, name of the trainer, what MOOP was actually being operated, date of the training, name of the person, and is there an expiration date. So however long the training card is valid, that's how long the records of that training shall be maintained, and familiarization records will be maintained for 4 years at least. Now, there's been a lot of discussions that ANSI requires fall protection on scissor lifts, and right here, 681.1, the guardrail system of the MOOP is the primary fall protection for occupants. When required to use personal fall protection, either fall restraint or fall arrest, operators and occupants shall comply with the instructions provided by the manufacturers regarding anchorage. All Group B MOOP operators and occupants shall use personal fall arrest or fall restraint systems at all times. Well, this is a Group A. It is very clear that ANSI's calling a scissor lift a Group A MOOP, not a Group B. Travel with the platform positioned at the lowest safe position for the conditions. A lot of people are going to say this is ANSI saying boom lifts cannot be moved while they're elevated, and that's not what I'm seeing here, but I could see the argument happening. Moving a scissor lift while it's elevated is an unsafe thing. The operator should use available devices to deactivate the controls on the work platform whenever possible. And this is while working at height. So what this says is, as a scissor lift operator, you elevate up, get to your position to work, and then you hit the E-stop to make sure that you don't accidentally hit the controls while you're fumbling around with something and ram into something. Now this is entering or exiting a MOOP at height, meaning like we're using it as to land somewhere. And this is a pretty decent list right here. So if you need this, take a picture here and make sure that your specific area, wherever you're landing it, that you're complying with this. For those who haven't caught on yet, MOOPs are mobile elevated work platforms, and I'm feeling pretty moopy right now. So let's go have a little bit of fun and get out of these rules and regulations. let's talk about some common issues with scissor lifts and how to deal with them, how to mitigate them, how to not have these issues. One of the stupid arguments I've had with a previous safety person was they had a problem with us putting a bunch of stuff on the scissor lift. And the thought was, well, what happens if there's an emergency and the operator has to get out of the basket quickly? All these things can impede you. Well, I understand that that stuff right there can get in the way of someone getting out, but we can easily move the bucket over and walk out. Now, if you're putting a big bunch of stuff back there to where it really blocks you, okay, no. You need to reduce the amount of stock you're taking up. I understand that. But if we can just simply move it and walk, I don't see an impedance. Here's our next winner, and absolutely not. I got a lot of issues with this. One, you have no fall protection on, and I'm assuming this dude is elevated at least 6 feet in the air. No fall protection on at all. Two, that is not the way the ladder is intended to be used. Three, those handrails are rated at 200 pounds of force. They're not rated at however much you weigh, plus a ladder, plus your tools, plus anything else. So this is just OSHA violations all over the place. In this employee's defense, I can see the hard pipe that he's trying to get around. I get it. But there's more than one way to skin a cat here. Instead of lining up sideways along the work, why wouldn't we just come in from this angle over here, going straight at the work or slightly off to the side, and then just lean over and do your work? Why did we have to butt up right against the wall and make it to where we're going to hit all this piping? Now, I can't see the ground. I can't see what else is involved in this, but it looks like from this picture alone, the employee could have just repositioned the scissor lift. Very simple. Here we go again. Employees risking their life for absolutely no reason. This dude's not tied off. He's standing on handrails that are rated at 200 pounds of force. This guy here, he's also standing on handrails rated at 200 pounds of force. And he's tied off to a handrail that's rated at 200 pounds of force. And let's just go ahead and hit him for their scissor lift chain not being installed, because that is an incomplete scaffolding. So when these dudes do get caught, and they get down into the scissor lift and then lower back down, they're going to get nailed for being in an incomplete scaffolding. Why would you do this? Look, as a field safety professional, sometimes we have to do things that are weird. We don't risk people's life when we're doing something weird. That's not what this is talking about. I'm talking about when the competent person comes up and says, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but we're always going to be safe. A possible solution to this would have been having two scissor lifts, one on each side, to where they can elevate up nice and high and neither employee has to get out. At the very least, tie off to something. Now, granted, these are steel workers and they may be actually installing the same thing that you would tie off to. And that's why I wouldn't recommend like anchor straps or beam clamps or anything like that. It's because they're probably installing that which you would tie off to. So I get that, but this is just wrong. Exact same situation, employees standing on handrails that are rated at 200 pounds of force. Next one is the fall protection. Now, that mid rail is something around 6 feet, which means that top rail is probably something around 7 to 8 feet. That is going to be standing 8 feet without any fall protection, which is the violation of a 6-foot fall protection ruling. And don't y'all remember the JLG manufacturer manual saying gotta have head protection on? And while we're at it, let's go ahead and nail him for that scissor lift chain while he's down there anyways. Now, immediately, everyone's eyes are going to be drawn to the handrails, but technically, there's nobody up there, which means it doesn't matter how bad the handrails are because there's nobody up there. So that one he can wiggle out of, not being an OSHA citation. The real problem is, y'all remember back in the JLG equipment manual, it said, use it only the way it's supposed to be used-ish? Well, he's using it like a crane. And the first violation is using it like the crane. The second violation is now I'm questioning his rigging. When's the last time any of this stuff got inspected? What condition is it in? And then the third thing is, does he even have rigger training? And that actually brings into the next one of, does anyone think he even has scissor lift training? And then finally, why isn't he wearing a hard hat? All right, as our last picture that we're going to review, let's have some fun with this one. First of all, no hard hat, and I'm assuming this other guy here that I can't see his face, probably no hard hat as well. Next, this is what OSHA would call a scaffolding. Yes, I know it's scissor lifts, but what they're doing is building a scaffolding, and he's using a ladder on scaffolding, which is another OSHA violation. Next, you have two men right here, and I don't see a bit of actual tying off to anything. Now he's got fall protection on and he's got fall protection on, but nobody's tied off to anything, and those are definitely 6 foot plus falls. Next, this is a piece of cable tray. This is not a piece of scaffolding. This is cable tray where, it's literally a tray that you run cable in. It is using improper items for scaffolding. Things that aren't meant for scaffolding, they're using them as scaffolding. Next, this cable tray over here is sitting on a handrail that's designed for 200 pounds of force, not designed for scaffolding weight. Over here, it's the exact same situation. And if you look kind of close, you can see this employee, he's not on the top step, but he's on that step directly below, which that is a no-go step according to OSHA regulations in 1926. Right here, right now, we have a ton of OSHA citations. Does anyone think these guys actually have scissor lift training? What about fall protection training? Does anyone think they actually have fall protection training? What about hard hats? Does anyone think they actually have PPE training? What about scaffolding? Does anyone think these two gentlemen are trained scaffolding builders? All right, that's 2 more hits for no scaffolding training. Do you think this guy has ladder safety training? These are all this. Oh, you know what? Let's go ahead and nail him for a scissor lift chain and nail him for a scissor lift chain. OSHA's maximum penalties for serious and other than serious violations is increased up to $15,625 per violation. Did y'all hear what I just said? Now let's go back and look at that picture and let's do some math. Now with OSHA's max being $15,625, realistically, I'm sure this contractor trained their employees on something. And so instead of throwing out a $15,625 number for all this math, we're just going to cut it in half. And that's going to account for maybe the contractor did train him on scissor lifts. Maybe the contractor can argue and wiggle out of some of the fines. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to multiply it out at half rate. So 15,625 divided by 2 is 7812. 7812 times 20 citations is $156,000. $156,000 over, well, we just had to get the work done. This is stupid. You're risking your life, and project managers, senior superintendents, you're risking your employee's life over renting a $500 boom lift. You could have literally done this work with a boom lift. Now, the previous section we covered some pictures and a lot of the issues with the way an employee is doing work on the machine or having issues like that. This section is directly related with operating, and if I'm being honest, the majority of injuries and fatalities that we see in construction are not from the previous section's issues. Yes, there's fall protection issues that you can absolutely fall off a scissor lift and die. But the majority of scissor lift related deaths that we see, it's about operating it incorrectly. It's this section right here. So even if you fell asleep in the previous section, you need to pay attention right here, because this is going to get weird. For this first video, I give you a hearing warning, so you may want to turn your machine down a little bit, because this is going to get, the beeping gets old real quick. Notice the angle that he's trying to drive down, and notice that grrr sound. That is the drive sprocket slipping gears because he is operating at way too harsh of an angle. Now I want you to pay close attention to all the noises his machine makes as he literally starts drifting down this driveway or this roadway. Driving a scissor lift on a slope is dangerous, moderately, but it's also very damaging to the equipment. Now, driving on a slope when elevated is absolutely fatal. You can tell by looking out further down the picture that he is definitely on an incline. Whoever was operating is definitely on an incline, and as they were driving, it tipped over because the higher up you go, the smaller the center of gravity you have is. And just a basic little turning of the tires or a little gust of wind that normally you were able to rock and roll, well, now you're on a slope and it's going to take that machine right over and you're going to hit your butt pretty hard and possibly kill you. All of my companies and every class I've ever taught for scissor lifts, I tell everyone, do not drive elevated. If you need to move, come down and drive the lift. And both of these pictures explains why. One, driving elevated, all the crap that's on the ground, you're going to be driving over because you can't really see it that well, especially that really small crap. You got the plumbers over here cutting pipe, you have the electricians over there cutting pipe, and those little pieces are falling on the ground and going wherever. Normally, not too big of a deal, but when you're on that scissor lift, you can't see it. The second one is, it's so easy to forget where you're at. The top picture, I promise you, that employee forgot that there was a concrete edge right there and just drove right off it. If you were down on the ground when popping over that edge, granted, there could have still been an injury, but it would have been a much smaller injury than if you were elevated 20 feet in the air and came slamming down to the ground. Don't drive elevated. Don't make a bridge and try to drive your gazillion-pound scissor lift over a homemade bridge. Don't tarp your scissor lifts. What this means is taking some kind of a fabric or a plastic and putting it on the side of your scissor lift. The majority of the times people are doing it to either protect the employees from like rain or sleet or hail or whatever, or sometimes they do it to protect the lift from getting covered in whatever insulation or paint they're using. Sometimes it's used to put a banner up. This is all tarping. Anything that catches the wind and doesn't let the wind just flow through the rails is going to make that scissor lift want to tip over. And again, the higher the lift goes, the smaller the center of gravity, and the easier that lift is going to be to knock right on over. Know the occupancy rating for the scissor lift that you're about to get in. Most of them on the job site are rated for 2 employees. There are some that are only rated for 1. This heavy-duty all-terrain one is rated for 3, and this scissor lift without riggers is rated for 4. But again, most of them on the job site are going to be rated for 2. You need to check with the manufacturer's recommendations, that's that little book, to see how many people this machine is rated for and how many pounds worth of materials and tools and whatever else is it rated for. Don't overload your machines either by people or by equipment. Only 1 person per tie-off point in the machine. 2 people cannot tie off to the same point. Only 1 person per tie-off point. The last thing I'm going to address as being one of the major issues is the pure chaos of a job site. If we have 5 scissor lifts operating in the same area, the chances are pretty good that something's going to happen. Imagine this shop right here. Imagine operating. Now, granted, this is a maintenance shop. They're coming in. They're only moving them one at a time. But imagine if we had employees in every single one of these lifts. The chances are pretty good something's going to happen. The other things is like cranes and forklifts and other trades operating nearby. Look, if you're the foreman, if you're the competent person, and it's just too busy to be in there, do not go in there and operate a scissor lift. Don't let your people go in there and operate a scissor lift. If it is chaos, get out of there. The last thing you want, or you want your employees, or you as an employee want, is to be 25 feet in the air and somebody comes by and hits your machine. Sometimes because of the layout of like piping or air ducts up in the air, it's just a really hard spot and we can't quite lift the scissor lift up high enough to get to the area we need to. If this is the case, many of scissor lift manufacturers actually have a bump step like this. It is literally designed to work with that scissor lift and it gets you an extra 1, 2, or even 3 feet up into the air. Talk to the manufacturer or the rental company for your scissor lift and they should be able to get you in touch with the authorized or approved extra step or gaining height method on that scissor lift. I did not say just put on fall protection and start climbing the side of this thing like a monkey. Now, occasionally we have to do work outdoors, or even sometimes we have to do work in a dirt pit or something like that. Just a place where the terrain's really rough, or it's not smooth the way we'd want with one of these cute little scissor lifts. And when that happens, when we need it, either A, a boom lift, or B, if we have to use a scissor lift, that's when we're looking at an all-terrain scissor lift. And look at this beast right here. These things can be very misleading because once you start driving them around, you kind of roll back into that it's just a scissor lift thing, but this is an all-terrain one, meaning it's going to have more torque and it's going to be a faster machine. Especially a lot of times when you move it up into rabbit mode, this thing can really move. Go slow, take your time. Additional training is definitely needed on this lift. Getting used to it stopping and starting, because when it stops, it's going to lurch. And when it starts, it's going to lurch. So you need to give people additional time on this machine, as well as additional training on the fuel type. A lot of these run off of gasoline. Some of them run off of propane. Very few of them actually run off electricity, at least currently right now. So give your people plenty of time to get used to handling this beast. This is called skirting or diapering your scissor lift. And what it is we've had to use it before in data centers, and it is the GC or the customer doesn't want any chance of hydraulic oil hitting the ground. And I can understand that, but the problem is when you do this, you're blocking the pothole protectors. If this happens, you've got to take extra precautions to make sure that you're not going to drive over into any holes or drive into any potholes and tip your lift over. Now this is what we call landing, and this is potentially a horribly dangerous situation, but it can be the only way we can access something. The best option is if you're going to have to land on something, a boom lift is always a better option than a scissor lift. If we have to use a scissor lift, okay, priority one, you need to put a plan together, a written plan together. Safety Tavern is telling you, put a written plan together of exactly how this operation is going to happen and who's allowed to utilize this operation by name. Job site considerations need to be considered, but you need to plan to back this thing up against the landing. You can't have guys just climbing over the handrails unless it says it in the equipment manual that people are allowed to climb on the handrails. Otherwise, you have to plan it to where the opening, the place where the people are going to get onto that landing spot, is right where the actual door of the lift is. The whole idea of just climbing up on the handrails, that is not how the manufacturer has said you're allowed to use the scissor lift handrails, nor is it how OSHA said you're allowed to use mobile scaffolding rails, nor is it how ANSI is saying you can use MOOP rails. Nobody has recognized you just climbing on the handrails as the approved method for getting into and out of a lift, regardless of, well, we just got to get the work done. That's one of the reasons why a boom lift is always better than a scissor lift to use as a landing vehicle. The next big one, a lot of people use lanyards on scissor lifts. Safety Tavern completely disagrees with that and believes you should absolutely wholeheartedly be using yo-yos, self-retracting lifelines. Same thing, it's just the field term versus the proper term. Using a self-retracting lifeline, it stops the fall. Let's take a look at something real quick. Let's say you step out onto the landing here and you step to the left and oh, you fall. Well, what would you rather? Have a 1 foot fall or have a 6 foot unpacking fall? Pretty simple, right? Which one's safer, especially when you're doing something like this? But that is just the Safety Tavern's opinion. Talk to the competent person for your company to figure out what y'all want to do. Put all of that onto a plan. Where are you going to be hooked off at 100% of the time? How are you going to land? Who needs to be talked to? How are you going to, if there's an emergency, how are you going to get you, as well as anyone else that you've loaded up there, how are you going to get them off? Cover everything you need to cover in this landing plan, and then get it signed off by your competent person, and then whoever else needs to sign off on it and move forward. this is it. This is our last real section, the tie-off battle. Now, we looked at the user manual and it said JLG recommends, and that's usually the wording you're going to find in all the scissor lift manuals. We looked at ANSI and it's, well, is it type A or type B? We looked at OSHA and OSHA said, well, they're inside the confines of the scaffolding, so they're good to go. Safety Tavern is going to tell you, you need to tie off when you're in the scissor lift, even if it's on the ground. Yes, we've had that battle. Even if it's on the ground, you need to be tied off in a scissor lift. There's two reasons for this. One, how are you going to defend yourself in court if you're a supervisor, the foreman, or even you're just the lead helping somebody, helping train a new person? How are you going to defend yourself in court when all these other entities have said, we recommend it? And the second one is, it takes you doing dumb things like stepping up onto the handrails. You know how you get caught stepping up on the handrails or stepping up onto the toe boards? It takes that from being a life safety violation to just being an equipment violation. It takes it from being a felony safety charge to being a parking ticket safety charge. Does that make sense? Don't forget, nothing I said means anything without your competent person for your company seeing this and approving it as well. And then you also have your safety manual, your GC safety manual, and I have no clue what other codes, rules, or regulations you have to comply with, nor whatever OSHA regulations are on top of this, or ANSI regulations are on top of that as well. That is up to your designated competent person for your job site, for your company to figure out, talk to them. If you have any questions, problems, moans, or complaints, give it to them. God bless you all. You have a great day, and get back to work.